What is up, party people? It's the messy video game dude here, and now I'm going to talk about the Super Nintendo Entertainment System console. Just a quick look at it. This is my original one that I got when I was in second grade, which is probably about 1991, 1992. Yes, I am pretty freaking young, but that's beside the point. Super Nintendo was actually my second system that I've ever owned. After the NES, which I returned, I didn't have a console until I got this for Christmas. Now, the Super Nintendo is perhaps my favorite out of all of the systems because it was just so easy to play. The games, for the most part, were all excellent. Great graphics, great sound. The Super Nintendo had great sound for almost every single game that you can think of. All the main franchises, Donkey Kong, Metroid, Mario, Zelda, all had excellent timeless games. You think of the best games from each of the series, more than likely were on here. Zelda, Link to the Past, Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario World, Mario Kart, Star Fox, it's just endless. Super Metroid, Super Castlevania, great games on here. Tons of third-party support. Tons of features that were on no games before. Sega Genesis could not compete with the Super Nintendo. No matter how hard they tried, no matter how many times they tried to add stuff on, Super Nintendo just held on. Now, Super Nintendo, of course, it looked a little bit different than the Japanese version. Japanese version was still a little bit different than the Super Nintendo was. The Famicom basically had the same features for the most part, but instead of loading from the front like the NES system did, instead of loading from the front toaster box, it had a top loader with shutters to keep the dust out and to eject the games out. It had a little eject button, power button of course, and then reset. Two controller ports on the front. As you can see, mine isn't in that great a shape at the front. It has a lot of little cracks, marks, scratches, and for some reason, a lot of Super Nintendos, the outer part of the console started to change in different colors. This is what the Super Nintendo color was originally, but it becomes like a weird yellow, brownish, gray type of color, and it's hard to explain why, but it just happens when they age for whatever reason. Bottom of the console, of course, another extension port that's never used. I guess, would have been interesting to see if the Super Nintendo CD add-on would have happened, but then we would have had PlayStation and all those. Of course, on the back, AV cable for the system, Super Nintendo, GameCube, and 64. You can use the same AV outlet. You had the RF port, you had the AC adapter, you have the channel 3 and 4 thing. Of course, you have the Super Nintendo customer repair service line. Not much to it. Another simple system from Nintendo, and simplicity for them always worked. They always care about what kind of games they made for the most part. Super Nintendo was a classic. It lived on for a long while. It was a long-running system, and it's just one of the best systems ever made.